The taste. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in him. Psalm 34:8. He was experiencing tension as he was putting on a tie because he knew his wife was going to flare up at him. He intently thought about how he was going to counterattack. He thought he should not let her win, but instead keep pressing his argument until he wins the fight. Strangely, though, she didn't say a word until he finished getting dressed. He knew his wife well enough. She would never let him get away with it and would come at him any minute. He kept himself on alert. He sneaked a glance at her. Her face seemed rather at peace. What's happened to her? She's not rebuking me. He put on his shoes and said, "Bye, honey. See you in the evening," pretending to be calm. "Okay, have a good day." He left for work with her plain and normal bye. He thought about it while driving and felt thankful and strange at the same time. This was not the first time she kept quiet. Her normal reaction would be to get furious and start going in on him. But again she kept her composure and bore with him. He tried to remember when it was since she began to be tolerant with his mistakes and faults. It must have been a few months now. She certainly had changed. He was born to a Christian family. He grew up habitually going to church with his parents. Then he gave up being a Christian when he entered college. Later on, he began his own business as well as started drinking and doing pretty much everything men in this world would do. His income increased, and so did his weight. His weight brought along physical illness. Yet he never considered changing his lifestyle. His body was ill, and his heart felt empty. His passion and enthusiasm also diminished. One morning he was watching his wife get ready to go to church. She always went to church by herself, and never asked him to come along. He began to have many questions about her changed look. She was always filled with energy and joy, while his heart always felt empty. She almost seemed as if she was living in a different world from him. He wondered what it was that made the difference between her and him. He assumed it was the faith which she had and he didn't. He thought it was the church that changed her. Then a thought flashed through his mind. Should I start going to church again? And he looked back on his life to realize that it had already been decades since he had stopped going to church. He took courage and began to ask her about her church, hoping she would suggest him to go with her. She must have sensed his wish because she suggested that he come along. As if he was giving in, he followed her to church on one evening. He sat in the corner and listened to the sermon. Tears began to flow as his heart overflowed with indescribable peace. His tears were born of regret as he asked himself, "What have I been living for all this time?" Since that day, he began to read the Bible and pray. He thought about Jesus every minute. He wished to live a life of obedience by asking for the Lord's will and guidance. He began to tell his friends and people around him about Jesus. His way of sharing God was by talking about his own experiences. People also saw the changes he was experiencing. One after another, they followed him to church. As he brought people to church, his health began to recover. He says that life is fun these days and that his heart is filled with joy and happiness. He also says that the best taste in the world is the taste of the goodness of God.